There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if you like.
One, two, three, set, go.
Right now on the Power Chord Hour, it is my absolute pleasure to be talking with musician, writer, actor, and original Violent Femmes drummer Victor DeLorenzo. We're going to be celebrating the Violent Femmes' fifth studio album, Why Do Birds Sing, which turns 30 this year, or has turned 30, I should say. And we're going to talk about the making of that record, discuss Victor's current band, 1913, see what he is up to. I know he stays quite busy with a bunch of different stuff, so I'm excited to get into it. Victor, how are you?
Anthony, I am doing fantastic. It's great to be speaking with you today.
I am I'm very excited for this. Like I told you before, looking really forward to it. I love this record, and I love a lot of stuff you've done, and we're going to get into that. But first, I mean, to really start at the beginning with you, I want to ask your beginnings in music. Like, were drums your very first instrument?
My very first instrument in grade school was viola. I had a wonderful music teacher, Mr. Uppercuff, and we studied viola and also, if you can believe it, the tin whistle.
Nice.
So those are my two starting instruments, and the only reason I ended up playing drums, or the drum set in particular, was because I had received a phone call from my cousin one afternoon, and this was when I was about maybe 16 years old. And he let me know that a friend of his was going to Vietnam, and he had a drum set that was for sale, and he wanted to know if I knew anybody that might be interested in buying this drum set to help out his friend. And I said, well, I don't really know anybody that I could turn on to as far as buying the drum set, but I think I might be interested. And I couldn't even believe that I was saying that, because I never really had any inclination to play drums before, but maybe I was just feeling a sense of goodwill that day, but I said I would buy the drum set. So for $350, I bought this beautiful, probably early 60s Slingerland 4-piece drum set with cymbals. Beautiful. It was like a black oyster pearl color. And it sat in my parents' basement for about 3 weeks when I would come home from school, and I would look at it in the corner, and I would just think, well, maybe someday I'm going to be able to realize how to set this thing up and maybe play some music on it. But I was in the dark about even how to set it up. So finally, I convinced a friend of mine who was a drummer to come over and help me set up the drum set, which he did. And then I just started the usual thing that a lot of people do when they start playing an instrument. I started playing along to recordings. And I found that I had a facility for the drum set. So then I got serious about it, and I started studying with a great teacher in my hometown of Racine, Wisconsin, who was named Joe Police. And he was a big band drummer in the 40s and 50s in Chicago. So he got my reading together, as far as reading rhythmic notation. And he also introduced me to the beauty and artistry of playing the brushes in a jazz context, which then I brought over into the rock world and bastardized that. And that's kind of what I was known for in the Violent Femmes, is playing a lot of brushes.
That's really cool. And like what age was that then that you started really getting into drums then?
Well, probably my 16th, going into the 17th year. And I really fell in love with the drum set, and especially a lot of the drummers who were still around and still working quite a bit at that time, whether it be, we'll say someone like Buddy Rich, who I wasn't really that interested in. I could certainly respect his speed and his dexterity, but I was more into the African-American drummers like Tony Williams and Elvin Jones and Max Roach and Don Moyer from the Art Ensemble and Art Blakey. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on, but I was really influenced by African-American drummers.
That's awesome. Like that. And it also seems like the learning you got and where your influences has come from, you really do have a style of your own, I think, in the rock world. Have you ran into many other drummers like through like during your Violent Femmes day and stuff, who had that kind of background? I mean, I feel like that's a pretty unique background for, you know, like you said earlier, bringing it into the rock world. You know, that's pretty unique.
Well, I tell you, at that time, a lot of the drummers that I knew and I was working with in town here in Milwaukee, some of the ones I was attracted to were jazz drummers. And I did study here in town with a jazz drummer. And then I also was studying at the university symphonic percussion with a fellow by the name of Telly Lesbines. And Telly used to be, he's no longer with us, but he was the chief timpanist with the Milwaukee Symphony and also played assorted percussion. So Telly was also a jazz drummer. So I had the best of both possible worlds studying with Telly. But as far as other drummers say I would meet when I'm on tour and that, a lot of the drummers were coming out of the punk scene or some kind of rock and roll based music. But I didn't really meet all that many people that had the jazz and classical background that I had. And also my early introduction to performing was not even as a musician, it was as an actor.
Oh, really?
So I also had that to draw from. Yeah, I was doing stage performances from the time I was 10 years old. And eventually, when I was at University of Wisconsin here in Milwaukee, I had a triple major. I was studying comparative literature, music, and also theater.
Geez, you stayed busy.
I was staying really busy, and I tell you, my real love was acting and theater and film and television. So one day I was coming out of class, and I saw on the theater bulletin board that there was an audition for a male and a female for a theater company in town, which was a very well-respected company called Theater X, and the X meant the unknown. So they did a lot of developmental theater, a lot of what some people would term avant-garde theater. So I decided that I would audition. I auditioned, and out of the 35 males that they looked at, I actually got the opportunity to join the company. And I did. And when I came into the company, my role was to replace Willem Dafoe, who was here in Milwaukee with the theater company. And this was just when he was on his way to New York to film Fame and Fortune.
That is amazing.
So I took Willem's place in the company, and I was working quite steadily as an actor for a few years. And then music took the back seat for a while until I started working with Brian. And then we developed the Violent Femmes rhythm section, which was just Brian and I at first. Before we ever met Gordon, we were working as a rhythm section for hire, and we called our rhythm section Violent Femmes.
So was that your first band then? Did you do anything prior to that?
Oh yeah, I had bands in high school. My very first band was a band called Fresh Lettuce. It was a crazy high school band. We even had a theme song. I'm a head of lettuce, baby, rolling up to your door. I'm a head of lettuce, baby, not from the grocery floor.
I love it. Oh my God.
Yeah, so we did some early recording with that band, and that was my introduction to playing in a band was with Fresh Lettuce with some of my friends from high school.
Did you play shows and stuff with them?
Oh, sure. Yeah, we were really popular in my hometown of Racine. We played dances. We played little playgrounds, like entertainment during noontime for kids on the playground. And then, like I said, we played dances at night. And then a friend of mine who was in the band acquired a 4-track reel to reel, and we started making recordings and writing original material.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it was really fun. That was a good education to have, and it really prepared me for things to come.
So then you were probably, when it came to like playing shows and stuff, you were probably looking forward to that, coming from the acting world, being on the stage and stuff. Like, did you have much stage fright in the beginning, or at that point, like, since you did acting and everything before, you're like, oh, this is a breeze, like, perform it, like, this is nothing?
Well, when you're performing as an actor on stage, it's certainly a lot different than when you're taking on the guise of a character and working in the context of, say, a rock band. Because playing in a rock band is different in that you're not really trying to get across an idea of, say, a playwright or a director. You're hopefully responding to what the audience is giving you, and you're also working with text and music that has already been written and is ready to present. Whereas in the kind of theater I was doing, sometimes it was improvisational based. Other times you worked with all the greats like, say, Shakespeare or Chekhov or Ibsen or Pinter or who have you, and you would rework old texts or old plays in a modern context. So in that way, when people sometimes ask me also, so is it kind of the same thing being an actor on stage or being a musician? And I always say no. I always use two different parts of my brain depending on which one I'm doing.
That's interesting. That is really interesting. With the other thing though too, now that I think about it, also like you were talking about kind of feeding off the reaction of the audience, I would imagine, when you're acting, there's a lot of times where you're not really getting reaction. They're sitting there watching, whereas, a lively music crowd, you're going to see people jumping around and moving in a way where, yeah, you probably don't see that so much in a, like in a theater or something.
Right, because it's really based on collaboration and bringing the directors and the playwrights' vision to life. Whereas, as you just mentioned, when you're in front of an audience as a rock band, you're kind of just holding on for dear life and trying to put some kind of energy in front of the audience that they'll appreciate.
No, that is interesting, and I'm kind of happy that you brought up the acting now, because comparing that, I was wondering, and that makes total sense that it would be like two different parts of your brain. But now, is there anything though on the other side of that? Are there any similarities? Like, there's anything that you feel like that you brought in to the live show when you started playing live from acting?
Well, I think at first, probably the role that I fulfilled in our trio was that of the manic, pseudo kind of a crazed Keith Moonish kind of a drummer. But eventually that faded away because, well, there's certainly more to myself than just being a manic drummer. And I had a lot more to bring to what Violent Femmes came to mean. And also being a musician who not only played the drums, but also played other instruments and also wrote songs, I also had that part of my creative life to entertain with. So it wasn't just the idea of being a drummer. It was it took time, but I was trying to develop as a musician and as a performer. I never gave up the acting life. Whenever I would come back from tour, I would always find, if I had time letting me do this, I would audition and perform as an actor in different theater productions here in town. So I always wanted to keep both those plates spinning in the air.
Nice. That's really cool, and I feel like it gives it gives an idea of where you're coming from. Same with like the early influences, everything, and like coming from a different place than maybe other drummers in like rock bands and punk and stuff. So
yeah.
I think that's really cool.
Well, it's nice because it satisfied my curiosity, because I wasn't just looking to become a famous drummer in a famous band. I wanted to play music, and I also wanted to continue my studies as an actor and hopefully someday make movies. I've only been a part of a few smaller movies, but I've certainly done a lot of theater and I've done some television, and I'm at this point in time looking to get back into the theater world. So that's something on my horizon again that I'm very excited about.
That's neat. Yeah, you're definitely not one dimensional. You seem like you have like definitely more than one interest. You're not just drums. You're like, no, I got you really spread out your creativity.
Well, I try to. I'm glad you're noticing.
But we're going to get into the recording of Why Do Birds Sing, and like to start out, typically for the recording experience for you, are you someone who enjoys? I always like asking this because I get both answers for it, and like, Are you someone who enjoys the studio experience, going in and like toying around with the songs and like that whole part of it? Or are you someone who kind of wants to go in, get a good take, get it out, and just go play live?
I like all different facets of recording. My father presented me with my first little reel-to-reel tape recorder when I was 7 years old.
Oh, nice.
And ever since that time, I've had many different tape recorders. And I'm sitting right now in my studio here in Milwaukee, which I've run for over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
So I've always been involved in music, not only as a performer and a writer, but as an engineer and as a producer. So I probably produced about maybe 50 records for different people, and I've engineered quite a few different recordings for people. So it's something that I'm really jazzed about. I love the idea of recording and learning the techniques. And I'll tell you, one thing that's been great about the pandemic is being home for so much time and really diving into the world of YouTube, where there are so many fascinating interviews with producers and engineers, studio owners, instrument manufacturers, you name it. I mean, there's such a wealth of content there that I never really had time to examine. And during the course of the pandemic, it's really been a watershed educational experience for me. I've really tried to put it to good use, the idea of having to stay in the house all the time.
That's really cool. Are there any and that's awesome. I didn't realize you'd like been so big of a part of like production and stuff for that long. Like, are there any producers like that stand out to you that have like influenced you over the years, or that like you were just talking about looking at these like interviews and stuff? Like, are there any ones that you just, you know, like when you're recording music, you kind of look at their approaches and kind of maybe get some influence out of them?
Well, the number one name on that list would have to be George Martin, because my love of the Beatles started when my cousin told me to come over one day, and he said he was going to play me this new single called Hey Jude.
Nice.
And I heard the record, and I was a total Beatles fanatic then for the next 7 years. That's all I listened to was the Beatles, because I was coming out of the world of theater and film and acting. That was my concentrated point of study. And once I heard the Beatles, I had something else to do with my time, and that was to dive into the music of the Beatles. And they certainly taught me, along with George Martin, not only about production, but about songwriting, about the sonics of making a record, organizational aspects having to do with arranging of records. I mean, there you go. That's the University of the Beatles is a very vast university.
You're not wrong.
Beatle you.
Beatle you. I love it. When it came time to start recording Why Do Birds Sing, were the songs pretty much finished and fleshed out? Or, I mean, was there much working in the studio? And actually, kind of go along with that, did you guys tend to go in the studio with songs all pretty much finished, or was there some writing in the studio?
Well, from the very first record, we had always prepared material to go in, but at the same time, we weren't adverse to recognizing something that was just being formed, whether it happened during the course of working in the studio on other material, or if we had a germ of something that we hadn't quite developed. So we always left all those doors of creativity open, so to speak. But that was usually what we did. We had a certain amount of material ready to go and ideas of how we wanted to record it. Usually what would happen, Gordon had a notebook that he kept of tons of lyrics, all the way going back to high school, I think, that he had written. And also, I think, some ideas for chord structures and what have you. And so essentially he would bring us, and us I mean Brian and myself, he would bring us the songs, he would play them for us, usually on acoustic guitar, and then we'd talk about the song, and then we'd have initial reactions as far as arrangement ideas, and we'd throw those at Gordon, and we'd kick those ideas around a little bit, so we knew at least where we would like to start once we got into the studio. And then we would rehearse the songs. sometimes we would rehearse them in a rehearsal setting, whether it be in my basement at my old house or what have you, or something that Femmes like to do a lot, which I don't know if a lot of other people like to do this, but we would sometimes run through a new song backstage and then perform it for the first time
Oh my
in
God.
front of the audience that night. Yeah, just do it.
Yeah, I don't think many bands do. I definitely think that's unique.
Just to dive into it and just see where it would take us. And during the course of, on a tour, say working with the material, that would help us too to shape and form the material for the recording session.
Oh wow! So there was writing on tour then too, which sometimes I talk to people and they go, "I can't write on tour," where you guys are literally writing stuff backstage.
Oh yeah, I mean that's one of the great things about the Femmes early on is that we always had material going. It wasn't like, "Hey Gordon, we're waiting for you to write some songs so we can make a record." We just always had material, and Brian and I were blessed with pretty good ideas of how to arrange songs, given our knowledge of a lot of different music that we had listened to over the years. So we could bring in suggestions from all different worlds of music, whether it be country or different folk musics from around the world, or free jazz, or geez, I mean, you name it.
I love that because there's a lot. I mean, going back to it, like again, you guys being in that rock and punk world and everything, these are not always influences that you hear in punk music. Like there's a lot of people who would have no clue some of these like styles and stuff.
Well, especially at that time, Anthony, this is before the onset of people really being acceptable to something, say, using the term world music. There really wasn't anything like it at that time. And I think that we were one of the bands that weren't afraid also to bring in religious aspects into our music, which some bands would look at maybe as a suicide maneuver. But we wanted to bring parts of us into our music. And Gordon was raised in a religious family. His father was a pastor. So he definitely had that as part of his makeup. And it did cause some problems with Brian sometimes because Brian was an atheist. I looked at myself as a Catholic in remission. So I had certain parts of Catholicism that I held important in my life. But at the same time, I was open to all different kinds of religion.
Yeah,
Having been in the world of theater, where you start to really investigate and become curious about all different kinds of things.
Yeah, I think that's one of, and I think in hindsight it worked out, and it's what makes the band so unique. But like you're right, you guys did interject parts of your personality in different things that maybe not every band would. But at the end of the day, there's not many other bands that sound like you guys. You're kind of in a category of your own, which I feel like is accredited to a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, where it's like, oh yeah, again, not the you're not taking the conventional route into like, Rock Band 101 or whatever.
Well, the funny thing about it, Anthony, is that we cultivated our own uniqueness when we came on the scene because we realized we had something there that really wasn't readily available in all kinds of other music groups at that time. We were very adventurous. And I think from my standpoint, too, what I brought from the avant-garde or experimental theater world was the idea of, hey, you guys, listen, we can do whatever we want to do. We don't have to worry about fitting into any kind of a mold, like say, well, we have to be like the Rolling Stones or the Velvet Underground or whatever it would be. We were really into trying to find out what our sound was. And it just so happened, what I mentioned before, Gordon had this wealth of material, and a lot of the material defied description, where we could put any kind of a skeleton inside this material and create a different kind of Frankenstein, so to speak, where it wasn't just, oh, that's a country song, we gotta play it like a 3-chord country song. We would take certain songs and say, well, what if we did it this way? Or when it got to this part, if this came across at this particular time, even though maybe sometimes we're a little bit hesitant to really follow our hearts, but the more we did, we found out that the rewards were really great. It was really nice to feel as though we are in the vanguard. We are doing something different. And I think to this day, there's a lot of bands that were happening at that time that really owe Violent Femmes a lot. And I don't think in many ways we've ever been given credit for opening up people's minds to a lot of different things.
I would heavily agree with that.
And that's my commercial for Violent Femmes.
That's a damn good commercial. I think you're right. Because again, like, there's not a band like, I mean, I've loved you guys forever, but like even thinking more, like when getting ready for this interview, thinking of questions, thinking of different things, I don't know what to compare you to. I don't know what bands like, which at the same time is cool because, you know, I don't know that people take as many chances. Like I don't we have a lot of bands take influence from you, but I don't know like that anyone would take that chance, like you said, where it's like, we're just going to do our thing. Like is it popular? Is it what everyone's doing? No, but we're going to do it. We're going to see what happens. It doesn't have to be, you know, like in a mold.
Yeah. We were always trying to move forward. We weren't waiting for people to catch up to us and make us popular. We were popular amongst the three of us. You know, the way we looked at it, we were really having fun. And when we started to make some headway and people started to notice, it was a real good pat on the back, and it certainly gave us more courage and confidence in going forward with a lot of our experiments having to do with putting together musical styles and dealing with different kinds of text in the course of the songs, and also the way things were recorded. I mean, all of that came into play, and it was really exciting for the three of us for a matter of time. But then I think what happens with a lot of bands is you start to get too familiar with one another, and familiarity breeds a little bit of contempt, as we know. And then also there's the idea of money coming into the equation, and then also wanting to do other things, because certainly speaking for myself, I definitely wanted to return to the world of theater and also try to get into film. So there was a lot of things that contributed to not only the growth of the band, but also the eventual decay of the band.
Where were you guys, like obviously this Why Do Birds Sing ended up being your last record with the band, and you were still around for a few more years, but like where was the band's relationship around the time of this record? Were things still good, or were they were things kind of dividing like you seem to kind of be talking about right now?
I think we all appreciated the time that we had to ourselves at this time, and it was almost as though you had to punch in at work to go on tour. It's not like it was 100% bad, but at the same time, for the reasons I just mentioned, people were starting to have other thoughts about maybe what would make them happy. And in a way, I mean, I look back at it and I'm sad, because it's a story that affects a lot of groups of people that are getting together for creative endeavor. Sooner or later, you just run out of not only patience, but seeing a way forward, and you feel as though you're stifled, and you have to have others around you that maybe will give you new energy, and maybe you want to follow a train of thought that's not shared between three people.
And two, I mean, at this point, I mean, this is your fifth record. You guys had been together for close to almost a decade at this point. Like you'd been around a while by the time.
Oh yeah, and we played. I tell you, when our first years together, we played anywhere, everywhere, USA or in the world.
Nice.
We were working a lot.
Did you continue? Like for me personally, like I'm 28, so like I became a fan way later. So like context for me with this, yeah. Like did you continue? Because from what I can tell, you seem like you toured a ton. Like when you guys were together, you seem like that whole run you were basically touring. Minus like I know you guys took a little break in between there in the 80s for like a year or something. But besides that, it seemed like you were very, very busy the entire like lifespan of that band.
Yeah, it was a working band because we made a lot of our money touring and selling merchandise, not so much money off of the recordings. So it was something we had to do. I mean, it was part of the makeup of trying to survive.
Yeah, what was I going to say? Even like for this record, was there a lot of touring when it came time once Why Do Birds Sing came out? Like, did you guys tour a lot off this record?
Oh, sure. Yeah. And we were lucky enough too that we had a couple songs that got on the radio. I mean, we had a version of the Culture Club song, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me?
Great cover.
And right. I love that cover too. And actually we have heard from Boy George that's his favorite cover of any band that has done a Culture Club song. So that's cool. And also we had a minor hit in our song called American Music, and there was a real interesting video that was done for that piece too. So
I was going to say, did you see, because like American Music, yeah, is definitely one of, I would say, the band's like biggest singles. Like, do you feel like you saw a change when that came out and that got popular? Like, do you feel like you saw more faces at the shows, or like hearing the band more on the radio and stuff?
Well, we were starting to hear us more on the radio, and I should probably contextualize that on regular radio, not just college radio. We were starting to get it. Yeah, we're starting to get across to a little bit of the mainstream pockets here and there. But as far as audience size, after a certain point in time, after Why Do Birds Sing, after The Blind Leading the Naked, we really had quite a big surge in audience numbers. We were starting to play in bigger venues, and I think the word was really starting to get around that we were here to stay. That here we had another record out, and it wasn't just a passing phase. That we were going to continue to write new music and hopefully get the backing of our record company.
You know, that's kind of a unique thing with your band too, which I hear a lot of people talk about, how like you were a word of mouth band. Like, so many people didn't hear you first time, like on the radio. It was a mixtape or something, which is quite amazing, because when you think of context, this is pre-internet. This isn't like sharing on your Facebook wall, hey, I like this band or something. Like, so do you feel like that was true? Like, were you very much just a word of mouth band, you feel like, back in like the 80s and 90s? That's really how a lot of people kind of found the band.
Oh yeah, definitely word of mouth, and of course college radio. College radio really broke us, and we were also, as I said before, willing to tour all the time. So when we would come to a little college town, we'd be there on the radio, and we'd play live, and then we would do the show that night. And that was just part and parcel of what we were doing to try and become a band that was going to have some kind of life. So it wasn't just something we did for a summer and then it was over. And thank God for college radio and some of those young disc jockeys that really helped to put us out there. And I think people realized too early on when they saw us that if you wanted to see Violent Femmes, you had to see Violent Femmes. There wasn't another band that was like us. If you wanted to see REM, there was some other bands that were kind of like REM, right?
Totally.
I mean, right. And we were just very unique unto ourselves. These strange psychedelic farmers from the Midwest that played this crazy kind of music that especially from time to time incorporated what I would term as free jazzistic improvisation. And you didn't have that in other bands at that time, especially rock bands in that context. They would look at that as, well, this is a way to alienate our audience if we did that. But we looked at it as a way of, this is expressing our musical souls, because so much of what we did was based on improvisation. The songs had song structures, of course, but we always left pockets in the middle or at the beginning or the end, or maybe just starting a flight of fancy, not even knowing what we were going to play. and just improvising in front of an audience. And that's something that rock bands didn't do, especially rock bands that had one set, and that's the set they played for this tour. And that's all they did. We didn't do that. We never had a set list.
Oh, really?
We went on the stage. We didn't know what we were going to play.
Nice. Would you just have like a repertoire then? Just like, hey, these are the songs
Oh,
we
yeah.
can play?
Oh, God, yes. Yes.
That is so cool. Now, like, do you think then that's why like college radio and college ever like kind of embraced you? Because like you said, you were the unconventional. You guys would throw in this like jazz stuff, like things that maybe the mainstream in the beginning wasn't as welcoming to, that maybe college was a little more, you'd find maybe more like open-minded people who would like take a chance on that stuff.
Yeah, I think there was more fertile minds in the college, and also the curiosity aspect was running just as rampant as it was for us. We were curious about life, of course, and all different kinds of musics that we could experiment with and present to an audience. And I don't know how many times people after shows would ask us where our music came from, and we said, well, the music comes from the three of us, but what has come before us is being filtered through us. So it's not as though we're creating something just out of a fog. I mean, there is a basis for what we do, but it gets filtered through you, and it takes on a different form of expression then.
Yeah, it gives you that unique sound. It gives you, that's where the sound comes from. You kind of like mixing all those influences together, and then what you learn eventually, taking your influences, and then what you get out of that, making your own unique sound, and then putting it together as a trio, and there you go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But for the record, for Why Do Birds Sing, I know you recorded it with Michael Beinhorn, who was a guest on here a few years ago. Where'd you guys record the album at?
Well, mostly in Los Angeles. We did a lot of the recording with Michael at American Recording, a studio in Woodland Hills in Los Angeles. This was a studio that I think the band Three Dog Night recorded a lot of their hits there. And I think the engineer and producer who worked out of there and might have even owned the studio was, I think his name was Richie Polidor or Podler or something. But we worked mostly there, but then we did some other tracking at Sunset Sound in Hollywood. And then we did some mixing at Larrabee. And then when we went out to New York to work with Eric E.T. Thorngren on a couple of the singles, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me and American Music, we worked at the Hit Factory in New York.
Oh, nice.
But then we eventually came back to Milwaukee, and we did some recording at our friend Dave Artanian's studio here in Milwaukee, which is called the Perversion Room. We had signed on to work with Michael Beinhorn, and we did pre-production with him. And it seemed as though things were going pretty well with Michael. But then when we got to the mixing phase, the engineer that we were working with is Susan Rogers. And she was a sweetheart. And of course, most people know Susan Rogers because she was a very influential producer with Prince.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But anyway, we were under a deadline, and we were trying to get the record mixed, because we had to go back to Milwaukee. I think we were getting ready to go out on the road again, so we had to get the record finished. But we were having some problems translating ideas to Michael and Susan. So eventually what happened was, when we got back to Milwaukee, we decided that we had to remix the record. And so we remixed the whole record in Milwaukee with our friend Dave Artanian to get the sound and the atmosphere that we were looking for. Obviously, this did not make Michael Beinhorn happy, and because I was the oldest one in the group, it was left to me to call Michael and tell him that we were going to take the record away from him.
Oh no!
So that was sad. That was a sad conversation I had with him. But I think we were odd bird for Michael. Michael was more akin to working with rock bands, and we ain't a rock band. I mean, we play rock music, but we're not a rock band.
Well, now I actually had this written down. I wanted to ask you, and I mean, I feel like in a way you just kind of answered that, but like throughout your career, I was thinking this when I was thinking of questions to ask you about writing and recording of this. I feel like you could get producers who just didn't know what to do with you guys. Did you run into that? Because just either overthinking it, not knowing where you guys are coming from or what, but like you said, like with a rock producer or something, going in and going, like they're just going at it such a different way when it's like you guys are not, like you just said, you ain't a rock band.
Right.
Yeah.
And, I tell you, when we were looking for a producer to work with us, possibly on the second record, Hallowed Ground, one of the people's names that kept coming up, and in fact, we had approached him through his management, was Tom Waits.
Really?
We thought that Tom would have been excellent as a producer for Violent Femmes.
Cool. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, I think he would have been the best producer for us, but unfortunately, I think he was busy working on one of his own recordings at that time, so that wouldn't happen. But we worked with Mark Van Hecke, who I had worked with here in Milwaukee, because he was part of Theater X that I had mentioned before, the theater company I was with. And Mark was a composer that worked with Theater X, and then I got him involved with doing demo recordings with Violent Femmes because he had a demo studio in his apartment. But Mark worked with us for a while. Then, of course, we worked with Jerry Harrison, and then Warren Brule, who was a friend of Gordon's that we worked with for a little bit. But I really thought that Tom Waits would have been the one. He would have really brought home the bacon, I thought.
I can't tell you how much now you make me wish that there was a Violent Femmes album that existed that was produced by Tom Waits.
I know.
That is such a good combo. I've never thought of that combo together, but now that you say it, it makes total sense. And I think you're right. I think he would have totally gotten you guys. He would have understood what to do with you.
Right. Right.
That is God. That really
he could have made the beautiful sounds ugly and the ugly sounds beautiful.
I love that, and he would have done it amazingly.
Right.
Right. My God, you got me excited for something that doesn't exist.
Well, who knows? Maybe there's always a future.
That's true. That is true. That is true. I wanted to ask you too on this record, but I feel like and it's a big compliment I feel like you give someone, but like you guys sound like on a lot of records like you're live, like you were playing live in the studio. Was there much live recording on Why Do Birds Sing?
Oh yeah, all our recordings start from a live footing. In some way, the first initial tracking session will be the three of us playing something, but all together in a room, and then we will build from there. That's just the way it always worked for Violent Femmes. I mean, in my career as a recording person, I've done it all kinds of different ways, but that seemed to be the way that worked best for Violent Femmes, to try and showcase that initial energy that you get from having three people playing together in a room.
This, on this record, I know you guys ended up moving from Slash over to I'm blanking now. Reprise. You guys signed to. Did you see a big difference going from an indie to a major, or was there not much of a change?
Not so much of a change, because for the most part, I know it's something that bands always like to complain about, is the relationship between themselves and a record company. But all things considered, our relationship with our record companies wasn't really that bad. I think because we were such an odd bird, they did give us a little bit more leeway, because they didn't quite know what to do with us anyway, so they figured that we would show them the way. And as far as Slash Records was concerned, and this is true because I've heard from a number of different people that would know this to be true, but the reason why Slash Records was able to hang on for so long and become successful is because the Violent Femmes made them a lot of money.
Oh, I can imagine on those early records. Oh my God.
Yes. So once you start making someone money, they're apt to maybe let you have your way a little bit more.
Yeah.
They still want to exercise some kind of control, but they gotta come to that realization. Well, maybe these these idiots really do kind of know what they're doing.
For some reason, people like the music, which that is how labels should be. Like you would think that was the way labels go. It's like, well, we signed you for a reason. People seem to like you, but like it does seem like a lot of bands, they kind of take everything that was liked about the band and like remove it. You know, that can definitely happen. So so nice you guys did not fall into that. Were there any other labels like in between signing to Reprise? Were there any other labels that you almost signed to?
No, you know, we were always in the Warner family. That's just something. Well, I mean, before of Slash was an independent, but then they became part of the Warner family. But after we got on Slash, we stayed with them for all of our career. I know after I left the band, I think they dealt with someone else for a while, but I'm not exactly sure about that part of Violent Femmes. But like I said before, Slash was okay. We had some problems, but not too many. And then Warner Brothers were happy to have us on the label, and we got along fine with a lot of people there.
That's awesome. Yeah, you never know what people you get. You get a little bit of both. You can get nightmares, and you get ones like, nah, they were awesome. Like the major labels. Right. You know, sometimes major labels are great too, you know?
Sure.
But,
it just depends on the relationship that you have with the people.
Well, and like you said, it sounds like they were level headed. They didn't sign you going, this band might be like the next Beatles or something. Like they're like, we're going to see what they do, you know, like they're not your average band on the radio, you know?
Well, I probably everyone was just as surprised as we were that we went beyond just the initial record, that we were allowed to make a second record. So yeah, it was all kind of like a Schwab's drugstore story where it's a Hollywood dream come true. That's the way I always looked at Violent Femmes, because on paper it shouldn't work, but but for some reason it always did until it didn't work anymore.
You know, like how far into the band, like when was it that you realized it was, it was going to be more than just kind of something you do for fun, that like you guys were like, oh, like we make a living at this. Like we're going to be like we can do this. This isn't just like a hobby now.
Well, when it got to the point, especially when we started touring almost say 7 months out of the year.
Jeez.
And then what really reinforced it was when we got a little bit higher up in status and we could get a tour bus. Then it became really serious. Like, oh my God, we're on a tour bus and we are touring all over America. And then we're going to Australia, and then we're going to Europe. And so then, it became a bona fide job.
Yeah, that has to be crazy because, like talking to you, like you said, like in the beginning, it sounds like it was just very much, we're doing this for fun. We're playing anywhere and everywhere. We're playing for who will watch, you know, so that's cool. I think that's how the best ones end up, the ones who weren't. Obviously, you guys weren't trying to be like mainstream darlings or try to be what was going on in like 1983. Like, it's not at all. You were doing you guys, and, you know, it paid off.
Yeah, we were just three misfits trying to make our way through the world.
I like, what did you say earlier? Midwest psychedelic farmers or something like they described yourself. I love that. I wanna ask you, and I did not know this up until getting ready for this interview, looking stuff up, and I think it was amazing. I got to see some footage. I thought it was cool. Post Violent Femmes, I know you got to tour with the drummer for Velvet Underground drummer Moe Tucker. I mean, how did that all end up coming about? How did you end up playing with her and meeting her and all that?
Oh God, I'll tell you the story. It's a fun story. Brian had heard through the grapevine, and I think it might have been right after the first record, or maybe when we were getting ready to make the second record, Hallowed Ground. But we were on the road, and Brian had received, I don't know if he got a letter or something, but from Moe Tucker's daughter saying that she was a fan.
Nice.
So anyway, Moe and her family at that time were living in Arizona, but where was it? It wasn't. I'm not sure if it was Phoenix. Anywhere, it was somewhere in Arizona there, and we were playing. And Brian had somehow gotten word back to Carrie, that was her name, Carrie Tucker, to invite her and, her family if her mom wanted to come and whatever else. So we're staying at this little Fleabag hotel, and it's the afternoon, and I think we were getting ready to maybe go do sound check. And there's a knock on my door, and I open the door, and there's this girl standing there with Moe Tucker. And I was, a huge Velvet Underground fan. So I just right away went, Moe Tucker. She's looking at me and she goes, Are you Victor? Are you one of the Violent Femmes? And I said, yes, I am. Oh my God, it's so great to meet you. Come in. So they both came in, and then I called Brian. I said, hey, Brian, come here. Moe Tucker's in my room. So he came over, and we were hanging out, and we just became fast friends. And later that night, we were playing at this place that, what was the name of the band that we were playing with? It was some crazy band. Anyway, I can't recall right now, but where we were playing, this particular venue, they had a boxing ring, and the band played inside the boxing ring, and the audience was placed all around the boxing ring. That's where the audience stood.
That's amazing.
So it was absolutely crazy. And to top it off, through my powers of persuasion, I convinced Moe that she should come and sit in with us that night.
Nice.
So she said, I don't do this. I never do this with anybody. I don't do this. But I think she liked me and I liked her. And I said, come on, we'll just have fun. And you can just play the floor tom and just, playing a couple songs. You can just bang away. Don't have to worry about it. So she did that. And it was a blast. We just had her. Oh, Sun City Girls was the name of the other band, which was a real strange kind of amalgam of different kind of crazy Arizonian musicians. But anyway, so then we just became really good friends after that. And it got to a point where she called me and said, hey, Victor, would you like to come and maybe play with Sterling and I and
nice.
And Sonny Vincent and this other guy, John, what was John's last name? Anyway, he was normally the drummer, but he was going to play bass for this tour, and I was going to handle the drum set, except I did play bass on a couple songs. So I said, sure, Mo, I'll go out with you. So yeah, that was really fun to go out and play drums for Moe Tucker and her singing and playing rhythm guitar. She was a great rhythm guitarist. And also Sterling. And hearing the stories from these two about the Velvet Underground and then just playing music with them. And it was just a dream come true. It was really fun. And then later on, Moe made a record in New York called I Spent a Week There. I think the record was called I Spent a Month There the Other Week or something like that. It was some crazy title. But anyway, it was a crazy record because Brian and I, the Violent Femmes rhythm section, were on the record. Moe was on the record. Lou came in and he guested on a couple songs. Sterling was, of course, there playing. And then later on, John Cale came in and did some viola work.
You're like the whole Velvet Underground there.
Well, so on this record, you have the Velvet Underground with the Violent Femmes rhythm section.
That is so cool.
Yeah, if you haven't heard that record, find that record.
I have to go listen to this.
It's a Moe Tucker record.
I have to hear this. That is amazing. And
yeah.
It makes sense, too, then. So she was an influence on you then. Because, watching those videos from that tour, there's a few, grainy ones on YouTube, but they are out there. Right. And your drumming is perfect. And I feel like you're kind of playing in that, Velvet style. And when I watched it, I'm like, that makes total sense. Because there's another rock drummer who didn't play. She wasn't playing hi-hat and snare. She's playing that floor tom with the snare. And doing,
right.
She was another one who was an unconventional kind of drummer in a rock band.
She was an inspiration. I mean, not only was she a female, but also
that's true.
She stood up and played drums.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's something that I really dug, that idea of doing that. And of course, as you know, I incorporated that into Violent Femmes. But she wasn't the only drummer that I saw standing up playing. I mean, of course, there was a lot of Latin drummers that stood up and played timbales and stuff and congas. But also Gene Vincent, his drummers stood up and played snare drums sometimes with brushes. And Gene Vincent and the Blue Caps were the model for Brian and I as far as the rhythm section Violent Femmes. We loved Gene Vincent, and some of those early records, if you listen to it, you'd go, "Oh my God, it sounds like the Femmes." The instrumentation.
Really? See, that's another one I'll have to go check this out as well. That's cool to like hear the blueprints of your music.
Yeah,
you know,
those are the beginnings, right?
Outside of which, and I got to say that is so cool. You got to again work with Sterling and Moe and all of them. That is really cool. Was it just one tour? Yeah,
I just did one pretty long tour with them. Yeah,
that is really cool. Did you
But it was really fun. And Moe is such a great person to be around. You know, it's funny because I'm doing some research right now. I know Todd Haynes has this film coming out about the Velvet Underground, and I'm trying to reestablish contact with Moe because I've got a phone number for her that for some reason doesn't work anymore, and she doesn't really have any presence on the internet. So I'm in a quandary to try and get a message to her because I miss her. I haven't talked with her in a few years, and I'm just thinking I don't know why I'm feeling this, that I should make contact with her again.
And you're right. It is kind of hard because she's not on, as far as I know, I don't know anywhere on the internet that she's at.
Yeah, I'm going to have to do some more digging and maybe find the publicist for this new film and see if I can go through that publicist.
That's really cool. Outside of drumming and percussion, I mean, I know you play other instruments. What are some of the other like main instruments you would say that you play outside of drums?
Well, I do some keyboard work, guitar, a little bit of bass, and all those things I play in a perfunctory way. I'm not a real gifted musician, but I certainly can use instruments to write songs and to play basic parts. But I would say drum set is of course my main instrument. I also sing and I write songs. Yeah, I'd have to say the most facility I would have would probably used to be on a guitar, but now I've been playing more keyboard oriented stuff in the last few years.
Did you find yourself picking it up more during like COVID at all? Like, did you notice yourself playing piano more than maybe you had prior to that?
Not so much. I was into more writing during the COVID and also recording a couple records on my own. One record called Transophone, which is an EP, and that's almost like a singer-songwriter thing. And then the last record I put out late last year was a thing called Spoken Drum, and it is spoken word with percussion accompaniment.
Oh, nice.
So those are the last two things I've released, other than the 1913 material that I've released, which is 1913 is a band that I have, or a duo, I should say, with Janet Schiff and myself. Janet Schiff is a very fine cellist, and I play usually a different kind of drum system depending on what we're doing. Sometimes I'll just play a snare drum and a floor tom and a cymbal. Other times I'll play a full drum set. It just depends on the venue and what kind of music we're playing at that particular point. But that's my main focus now is playing music with Janet.
Now, how long you've been doing that for a little while, right? How long is 1913?
Oh, close
been
to
around?
10 years.
Oh, wow. Wow, yeah, you've been doing that a little while then.
Yeah, we have three records out, and we're working on a new one right now.
I didn't realize about the studio. That has to be great, being able to just kind of go record music when you want.
Yeah, I just go upstairs anytime I want, and I've got a beautiful studio. I used to have a full-fledged analog studio with the Sony MXP 3000 console that was a 36-channel console. Oh, nice. And then I had an MCI 24-track 2-inch machine. So it was a full commercial studio, which I rented out. It was a commercial facility. But then about close to maybe 8 years ago, I got rid of all that equipment, and I just stripped down, and now I have just a small digital workstation that I do all my recording on.
I mean, that has to blow your mind, right? Like being like coming from a time where, like we talked earlier, like when you got like your 4-track, like back in the day, that's home recording. That a 4-track is your home recording, to now being able to like, you make a full-fledged, fully produced album in like a home studio. I mean, that has to be like mind blowing, watching like recording techniques and just technology and stuff change throughout the years.
Well, there is a danger though too, Anthony, and I've certainly noticed this, in that just because people have the equipment doesn't mean they have a knack to use the equipment. The most important thing about a recording engineer is the connection between the ears and the brain, I think. And some people think that just by following certain things that they've heard to do, or just trying to get by with a very rudimentary sense of what it means to record, or how signal path works, how equalization works, compression, limiting, speaker selection. I mean, all these things that really take years to understand as an engineer. Sometimes, probably just because I pride myself on being a pretty good engineer, that a lot of people nowadays think that they can just get a microphone and some way to keep the information, and they can make a record. And of course, yes, they can, but is it going to be something that someone else wants to listen to, or is it just essentially an exercise in vanity? I mean, those things aren't so bad, but the way I look at it is, I really want to be intimately involved with the sound and have people ask me, how did you do that? Why does it sound that way? I
like that. And like, do you feel too, because with home recording like that, and I think you're absolutely right, like being able to just like, it's not just hitting a preset or hitting a button in Pro Tools or whatever you're using. Like there's an art form to it, and it is something that should take years to really get good at. Do you feel like music gets hurt at all? Like because with that being doing home recording, I notice more and more people don't have producers and kind of, they self-produce it, but I
Right.
kind of feel like that hurts too, because sometimes that outside voice, you need someone who's not, the 3 guys in the band or the 4 in the band or whatever. I think that's another thing that might be lost in modern music, is that outside, like someone really being able to tell you who's not, who's not going to have a biased opinion, someone who's outside of the band really actually helping, kind of aid along the recording or how something should sound or if it's good or not.
Right. Well, it comes down to the caliber of the people that you're dealing with. You can have a good producer and you can have a bad producer. And they can be either good or bad depending on what the circumstance is. I've found that the best producers really try to encourage to get a performance out of the people they're working with without resulting to trickery or lies or to ulterior motive, that it comes from a purity. Because I really think when you're given the keys as a producer, you have to address all kinds of things, not only the mechanics of music, but also the mechanics of having relationships with people. And sometimes a good project can go bad fast because you just don't have that repartee between the parties involved. And some producers just don't have that gene where they can really understand of how it works when you're trying to develop a relationship with people over a short amount of time, but you have to do some very important work together.
It makes total sense, because even I love interviewing producers, and there's ones that you interview where even just talking to them and the way they explain things, the way you talk to them, you do realize that is an art form. Because you're saying, you have to be able to talk to musicians. And that's another thing, being able to talk to musicians, not just people, musicians. Right. Understand too that this is their baby, that you're working with something that means a lot to them. And sure, there is something that interviewing producers, there is kind of, I guess, if you want to call it an it factor or whatever, like what you're talking about, that you have to have, because some don't have it, where you go, maybe they are being manipulative and stuff, where there's others where you go, oh, this guy gets it. Like maybe right, they were in a band or something and they just learned how to talk and deal with musicians, and that is something that takes talent. Like that's an art form in itself.
Yeah. Or it's a way of understanding. It's having an awareness of dealing with people. Some people you have to deal with as adults, other people you have to look at as children, unfortunately.
No, that's a good
But
point.
that's the psychology sometimes that you have to use. And it's funny because the beauty of music arrives in all states and forms in the human being. And I've found that you can work many different ways towards a shared goal. There's no one way to do it. And as long as you have that attitude, which is something that I gathered from working with so many different theater professionals, then I think you're always going to be able to find something that's going to work. But if you just have one set way of doing things, you're not going to work that often, I don't think, because you're going to sooner or later run up against some kind of people that aren't going to be comfortable working that way.
Yeah, or you'll find, I feel like, something like a Violent Femmes who don't fit the, square that you may like that you kind of fit bands in that you're working with,
Right.
But and you do, it sounds like you've recently been putting out some music. Is there anything upcoming that people should keep their ears out for from you?
Well, like I just mentioned, 1913 is working on a new record right now. Janet and I have it maybe about 70% done, I think. Probably we're looking to get it out sometime, I think, this winter.
Oh, nice.
And
so
then
before the end of the year?
Yeah, and then there's another project that I'm working on that unfortunately I can't really talk about right now because the project itself has just acquired a record deal, and we're going to be making an announcement in October. So
nice.
So I can't really talk about that, but it's with some other people that I think music lovers are going to kind of be surprised that we're putting our heads together.
Oh, that's exciting. That is definitely for people listening. I keep an eye out for that because you'll be announcing that here in like a month. Then, outside of music, are you working on anything creative right now? Any projects that you're doing?
Keeping up on my drum studies, and then also doing a lot of educational research via YouTube, and then being part of my family, and I've got a couple of grandkids now, so that uses some of my time. But I'd have to say at this point in my life, I'm pretty happy with the way things are going.
That's awesome. And it sounds like you stay, very busy. And as far as creativity goes, it sounds like you have more than enough outlets to get out. Anything that you want to do, it sounds like you have some kind of outlet that you can do it with.
Yeah, I've been fortunate in my life that I've been around a number of people that have really helped to assist me on my quest to not only become a better musician, but also to become a better actor or director or producer, what have you, engineer.
That is awesome. And as we close up here, I have a few quick short questions about Why Do Birds Sing. Overall, where does this record sit for you when it comes to your favorite Violent Femmes records? Where is this album for you?
Well, I'd have to say, Anthony, that there are certain songs on all the records that I absolutely adore. There's one song in particular on the Hallowed Ground record called I Know It's True, But I'm Sorry to Say. And I think that's one of the most beautiful songs that Gordon's ever written. And I really love our harmony singing on that particular song. There's another song on the album called Three, called Outside the Palace, which I think is the most Dylan-esque song that Gordon ever wrote. And that's also one of my favorites. Here on Why Do Birds Sing, let's see, I would have to say, oh boy, couple of them. Lack of Knowledge is a song that I like.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and then Look Like That, which was a song that we used to open our shows quite a bit when we were touring this record.
That is one of my favorites on the album. That is definitely one of my favorites.
Yeah, I really like that one. That's got a lot of the Femmes tongue-in-cheek kind of humor in it.
It also doesn't end the same way it starts. Like, it goes somewhere where you wouldn't expect it. It's a very Violent Femmes song in that way where, like, you guys end, I think, in a different place than where you start with that.
Yeah, it's where we welcome the audience to the concert. We're meeting people, nice people like you.
Is there is that like your favorite? I was going to ask you too. Another one I had, like, your favorite song off that record to play live. Is that sounds like that'd be a really fun one then to play live?
Yeah, it was really fun to play live. Hey Nani Nani is also a really fun one to play live. Well, I'd have to say, from the drumming chair, all the songs that I play with Violent Femmes are fun because I had a knack for coming up with different drum parts. And sometimes it was kind of hard because you're just playing a snare drum on certain material. And how do you get across the idea or suggest the idea of a full drum set only playing a snare drum with brushes?
That's a great point.
Right, but there's a way that I can suggest that. And it took me quite a while to figure that out. But just the way I play the brushes, and like I said before, how I bastardized the jazz style, I could approximate that and suggest things. But it was fun because the Violent Femmes also afforded me the opportunity to play sit-down drum set, stand-up drums, all different kinds of other percussion. So in that way, I was always satisfied. I always felt as though I could move forward, that I wasn't just trapped behind just one particular drum set.
Do you have a preference when it comes to playing like a full drum set or like playing the snare? Is it more just depending what you're playing? Kind of just.
I think it's serving the music. So whatever I would think might be called for, that's what I'll probably play. Whatever drum system I think fits.
Is it ever weird transitioning back and forth? Because I'm sure that's a different style of playing. You know what I mean? Like going back and forth, I'm sure you approach them a little differently.
Well, the drums are in my soul. I'm 66 years old, and I've started playing when I was 16. So I've been at it for quite a while. I don't really have to think about it so much anymore.
Second nature.
It's maybe even first nature.
Oh man, this has been a blast. I've been enjoying this. So, I mean, where can people find you online? Where can they stay connected with you? Where can they go? They know where to go find Violent Femmes. Where can they find 1913? All the stuff you're working on. Where do people go find you?
Well, we have a web presence, and if you just put in 1913, and that's not the letters, or excuse me, it's the word.
Yeah, spelled out.
Words 1913, right? It isn't the numbers. And then just for myself, I have a website. You can find me, and I'm on Twitter and also Instagram. So, yeah, I'm certainly not hiding. I'm out there.
No, you were definitely. And you're a good follow on Instagram. I just discovered you a month or so ago. I was also going to say, I mean, compliment to, like you said, like finding your drumming on the snare. I mean, credit to you. Anytime I've been in a music store or just about anywhere where you play that opening line to Blister in the Sun on guitar or bass, somebody somewhere does your snare part, whether it's on their leg, whether it's on a counter, you will hear it in the distance. You can't play that without someone doing the snare part after. So I got to agree.
That's another crazy thing about Violent Femmes, in that here's the song I suppose that's most identified with us. And when you think about it, the hook of that song are those stutter flams that I'm playing.
Oh, for sure.
When Blister in the Sun is played at sporting events, and it's played at a lot of sporting events now, the audience claps with me. So that is the hook. And I just find that's it's just crazy to me that song in particular, which is talking about someone stumbling around on the street in some kind of a drug-induced daze, can become such a mainstay in these sporting events as far as some music that'll get the audience going. I mean, it's fascinating to me. It's very wild.
Yeah, going back. I mean, honestly, yeah, going back as that kid playing on the streets in Milwaukee with them. I mean, I imagine, yeah, never in your wildest dreams you thought that one day those songs would be like played in sporting events and everything.
Right. I mean, it's just crazy.
Or that you'd be, or like now, like you're people like, let's talk about this album you put out 30 years ago. You know, like,
Yeah, I
like
know.
things like that have to be me putting myself in your shoes. I would imagine, yeah, it has to be crazy.
Well, one thing it does, Anthony, it makes me do research again. I have to go back and look at the records and really think about it and prepare before I talk to someone like you, because I want to do justice by the Femmes. And also, I'm very proud of our career. I mean, sometimes there's been disagreements and hard feelings between the three of us. But I think if you get the three of us in a room together, we would all say that we really love the work that we did together, and we're extremely proud of it.
That is awesome. And I mean, we kind of talked about it earlier, but like, yeah, extremely underrated. And I think going same with like the Velvet Underground, a band who I think a lot of bands after them taking influence from. I definitely think you guys too. You definitely hear Violent Femmes and alternative and punk, the folk punk genre. I mean, I feel like that entire genre, I feel like kind of begins with you guys in a lot of ways.
I think so.
Which here's it now as we do close up, another question for you, because I do see it come up a lot with people like the Violent Femmes, and maybe you don't care at all, but do you consider the Violent Femmes a punk band? Because I see people fight about this all the time, and I put you guys in that punk category. Like, maybe...
Oh God, yes, because that was in the air when we were coming up, and we love punk bands. I mean, my God, everybody from the Sex Pistols to the Clash to, I mean, you name it. We were really hip to all that English stuff coming over, and of course the Ramones. Now,
one of the greatest bands of all time.
One of the great experiences that the Femmes had was we got to open for the Ramones a few times.
Oh, nice.
And it was funny. One time, it was the first time, we were playing somewhere, where was it? Somewhere down south of all god-awful places. I'm not exactly sure it was. Some weird little hole-in-the-wall club. And we did our sound check, and we saw that the Ramones were kind of standing in the room listening to us a little bit. Then they went in their dressing room. So after we did our sound check, Brian and I went and we knocked on the door, and Joey opened the door, and he looked at us and he goes, "Hey guys, look, it's the Violent Femmes." So we got to talk with them, and we became friends with them. And then whenever I'd be in New York, inevitably I'd see Joey on the scene, and I'd say, "Hey Joey, it's me, Vic from the Femmes." But he was great. He was a nice guy. I liked him a lot.
That's so cool. I would have loved to see. I would have killed to see the Ramones and the Violent Femmes. What did that like mid '80s?
Right.
What'd you say?
I said, what a pairing. That was really fun.
Oh, I'd love that. Yeah, I can't imagine. That had to be Now, how was the reaction opening up? Did you get, because with the Ramones, I mean, I would love to see them live, but they seem like a band who people were there to see the Ramones.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, were they one of those bands were opening for them? Like the
No, luckily for us, people liked us too.
Oh, good. So, okay, good.
And I'm thinking of, these times in our history. I mean, even at the point where, now you might not even know this, but at the point in time when we were quite established, we got an offer via our tour manager knew the Grateful Dead's tour manager. So they cooked up this scheme where, hey, we're going to have the Femmes come and open for the Dead. And we were thinking, oh my God, yeah, like this is it's ever going to happen. So anyway, there was this big show happening in Darien Lakes in somewhere in the woods in Ohio. I think it was called Darien Lakes.
That's not in New York, is it? We have Darien Lake right up the road here near Buffalo.
No, I don't. I for some reason I thought it was in Ohio. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. Darien Lakes. It was something. I can't remember. I'm sure you can find it out.
We got a big arena up there. That's what I was thinking, because they do have an amphitheater up there.
No. This was outside in the middle of nowhere, where the Grateful Dead comes and they erect their stage, and it's like their little city that they build, and then everybody comes. Like 70,000 people come to nowhere to watch the show. So anyway, we got invited to open the show for them. So it was insane to be in the middle of this field on this stage, 90 degrees, but you're standing on the stage and the stage has air conditioning units built into it.
Jeez.
So it's 90 degrees, but you're playing music and it's like 70 degrees where you are.
That's so cool.
So we're playing our set, and we only played, like about a half hour as an opening act. But it was so wonderful to look stage left, and there you saw the Grateful Dead standing there watching us. And Jerry and the guys are digging it, like their heads are bopping back and forth and all that. So that was one of the crazy things where, this can't work, but it did. It did work.
That's also, I feel like, again, just to throw another compliment your way, accrediting to the Violent Femmes. How many bands can say they can open for the Ramones and open for the Dead? And it worked.
Right.
And it actually worked, too.
And it works, right.
Like even the Ramones opening for the Grateful Dead, I don't feel like may not end super well.
Right. I agree.
But no, this has been an absolute blast. I love that you do a bunch of different things. I like talking Violent Femmes, but I also like talking to someone who stays busy. You said, you're not just a drummer. You do a lot of different things, which is always really fun to talk about. But we're gonna play some songs right now. We'll obviously play some songs off Why Do Birds Sing. We're gonna kick it off with American music. But before we do that, I want to ask you, because we will play some 1913. What would be a song for you, for people who are maybe hearing you or about to hear the band for the first time? What's a good intro to the band? Like if you're going to play 1913 for someone for the first time, what's a good intro?
Boy, that's hard to answer.
I'm throwing you on the spot here.
I know. Well, not only being thrown on the spot, but also the variance in our material is so great that it's hard for me to pick out one piece, because we're very much of the attitude that we don't have any enemies in the musical world. And what I mean by that is we're friendly to a lot of different musics, but in some ways playing live, we're limited because Janet plays the cello with a looper and I play some kind of a drum system. So that's what happens live for the most part. Sometimes we have a couple other musicians accompany us, and that would be a bass player and a keyboardist. But for the most part, when Janet and I go out, it's just as a duo. Whereas in the studio, Janet and I play other instruments, so the recordings tend to fill out a lot more. So consequently, if I was going to say, if you want to listen to something that represents 1913 in the recording realm, listen to this. If you want to come see us live, and I think you'll like this song, it's a different thing.
We can play them both. Do you have one for each? We can definitely play them both.
I don't have any live material recorded. We haven't released.
Oh no, we can play a studio version though. We can still play something.
Oh, okay. Well, there was a version that we did of "Summertime," the George Gershwin piece, and that features a singer in town here. Her name is Manya. And that's a really good representation. But then there's also a song called Arco Pizzicato, which I think your listeners may like. It's a little bit more esoteric, but I think that really represents the eccentricities and also the uniqueness of 1913. So that might be one to play, Arco Pizzicato.
I like that. We will play that. And okay. I mean, I definitely did put you on the spot. I'm like, give me one song that represents your entire catalog.
Right.
but no, we'll play those. I mean, we've said people can go find you online and everything. As we close out here, is there anything else you need to add?
No, it's just nice spending the afternoon here speaking with you, Anthony, and to anybody who's listening out there. I hope this didn't come across as dead air. I hope you found something interesting in our conversation, and God bless Violent Femmes.
I love it. So right now, to celebrate 30 years of Why Do Birds Sing, we're going to play some Violent Femmes, play some 1913. Here's the opening track from 30 years ago. Here is American music right here on the Power Chord Hour. Right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast, a block of Violent Femmes for you, all off their record, Why Do Birds Sing? Right there was my favorite song on the record, Out the Window. Before that was He Likes Me, and opening up that block of music was American Music. And I mean, that was so much fun. If you couldn't tell from just hearing me talk to Victor, I mean, that was totally amazing. The man is a legend. I mean, Violent Femmes, absolutely classic band. You know, I mean, really, I've been saying this on social media a lot since I've been like telling people that, like, you know, he's been on. I mean, I've thought this forever. I've probably said it before, but it like reminded me of it again. The Violent Femmes, like their first record, if we're talking like debut records, that is one of the strongest ones to ever be released. Like that is up there with the Ramones' first record. That is up there with the Replacements' first record. That is up there with the first Bad Brains record. Like there's so many. There's just certain bands, I don't even say so many, there's certain bands who have like their debut, they just hit the ground running. And it's one thing to have like your first album be your best album, but these albums are like something different. Like that first Violent Femmes record, like what it did, it kind of you know what I mean? It kind of did do, I think, like the Velvet Underground did, you know, to kind of go like with the interview talking about him playing with Moe and everything, but like they kind of did the same thing in the 80s where it's like, I don't know, like initially they weren't maybe the most biggest band commercially, but it's insane how many bands the Violent Femmes influenced, including that first record. Like, I mean, just like the first Velvet Underground, which that one too, you want to talk about really strong debuts, the first, you know, Velvet Underground album I would throw in there too. That has to be an episode sometime. I did years ago, I think it was like 2017, I remember doing a all album openers playlist for the radio show, and a lot of those ended up being like the like first albums. Like I noticed I was doing a lot of that, like when I was singing like my favorite like first songs, they were on some of like the strongest debut albums out there. So I mean, that would be a fun like topic to really get into, but like the like strongest debuts of all time and like most influential. But anyways, Violent Femmes have one of them. I mean, front to back, that's one of those albums, if you put it on, like you gotta listen to the whole thing. You gotta listen to every song. It's just that good. And, you know, amazing to talk to the man who played drums on that record and all their other ones. I mean, Why Do Birds Sing? It's my second favorite Femmes record. I mean, the first one is my favorite Violent Femmes record, but Why Do Birds Sing is like, it kind of was like, it didn't sound like the first record, but it was kind of it had that same charm of that, like, you know, stripped back, kind of folky, kind of punk, you know, like clever lyrics and stuff, like a lot of that charm from the first record, I would say. And I love that album. It was awesome to talk to Victor about it. They are actually releasing it. It's coming out, I think, pretty soon, but they are putting out a 30th anniversary edition of Why Do Birds Sing, and it looks like there's like tons of bonus tracks and different, like, you know, like remixes or not remixes, but like other, you know, like alt mixes and stuff of the songs. So that should be pretty cool. I plan on grabbing that probably on vinyl, because I do not have that album on vinyl, and that would be one that another one, you know, that's like so good front to back, and I'm like, okay, that's one to have on a record, you know, because again, I mean, if you only like half the record, that may not make sense, but I'm like, oh, I like that whole album. So can't thank Victor enough for doing that. An absolute pleasure. I mean, I love when any guest, obviously you want to be able to get along with the guest and all that good stuff, but it's like when you're interviewing someone who, I mean, you've loved their music forever, and I mean, just an absolute legend. I mean, you know, from a huge band, could not be nicer, could not be more down to earth, could not be just more chilled out. I mean, a lot like Greg Eklund, you know, like last week when we were talking to Greg, Everclear's old drummer, you know, same thing where, like, you know, the man has sold millions of records. He's played Madison Square Garden. He has a Grammy. You know, I mean, was on MTV constantly when MTV were still like putting bands on and stuff, and has zero ego. Thinks nothing of that. Like I don't think he even thinks about, like, when you're talking to him, and I was like interviewing him stuff, I don't think he thinks of himself as like the drum, you know, like the former drummer of Everclear who played on all those big records. Like he doesn't think of himself as like the multi-platinum artist Greg Eklund. It's like he's just a musician, and, you know, even in his 50s, he's like, oh yeah, I'm still learning things. He's like, I'm just gonna jump into shit and see where it takes me. And I mean, that in itself is inspiring, and you know, so really cool. Again, like I said, just another good drummer too. Another drummer who has been in my record collection for a very long time and just could not be nicer. So awesome to talk. I'm very happy the last 2 episodes. I've been very pleased with the last 2 guests. They've been just so awesome. I mean, really, really cool, and people that I look up to. So it was awesome to pick Victor's brain, and it was awesome to pick Greg's brain last week. But thank you so much for checking out this episode of the Power Chord Hour podcast. If you want more, check out the radio show. We got new ones for you every Friday night on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York. If you do not live in Jamestown, have no fear. You can stream the station on our website, WRFALP.com. You'll see the big old streaming button there. And check it out sometime. You don't even have to check out my radio show, though, again, Friday nights, 10 Eastern to midnight. But there's so many good shows and stuff on the station, and it's so diverse. Like, whatever you're in the mood for. If you want, like, you can tune into my show and hear, like, punk rock and college rock and indie rock and all that. If you want old school hip-hop, there's old school hip-hop shows. You want Swedish music, there's every week a whole hour of just Swedish music. Like, there's like everything. There's like a little bit of everything is on WRFA, and cannot say enough good things as just a great station, and for letting me do the radio show there the last 5 years. Which also, to bring that up, Victor, speaking of this week's guest, Victor, one of the first songs on our very first episode, talking about, the radio show did turn 5 this year, but our first playlist on the first episode, Please Do Not Go, was on there. So we did have Violent Femmes, which again makes it even cooler, because like, I can't remember every single song that was on the very first playlist, but there's kind of like, I have a bingo card in my head where it's kind of cool to like interview someone from like each band that I played on the first episode. Like John Easdale from Dramarama, he was on earlier this year, and I played Anything on the first episode. Like stuff like that where it's like, oh, cool. Like you just start thinking of things like that, including milestones. And like as we're talking like the 30th anniversary here, the 5th anniversary of the radio show, and just like looking back at that first playlist. I'll have to look. I'm sure that CDR is somewhere. Like in the episode too, I have a copy of the episode somewhere in a hard drive, but God knows where it's at. But I'd love to hear it. I did recently find CDRs, because I put all the playlists on. That's what I would put them on. I would burn them at home and then bring them. I say that like it's in past tense. I still do that. I literally did that for this episode. I burnt the songs that you just heard and put them on a CDR and brought them down here, because that's just how we do it here. It's medieval. It's medieval times here. But yeah, just really. I found these old CDRs. And I think they went all the way. It was episode 2 or 3. Episode 1 was not in there. I got excited because I thought it was. But the playlist for either episode 2 or 3 was in there, and was awesome. Can't remember all the songs, but the opener was Harvey Danger's Carlotta Valdez, which I love that song. Which funny too, because I was on Twitter just before I found that CD, talking about how great that record is. Where Have All the Merrymakers Gone? How it's like the greatest. It is the greatest record you will ever find in a used dollar bin at a record store. That record, really not record. If you find it on vinyl, it's going to be a lot more than $1. But if you find that album on CD, you're going to pay $1. And it's like the greatest album you will ever find in a used bin, and totally unappreciative, or not unappreciative. The album is not unappreciative. It is unappreciated, is what I meant to say. Very, very good album. But yeah, getting sidetracked. Get back to my plugs. Let you know where to find us. At Power Chord Hour. I know you're dying to know. At Power Chord Hour on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. If you follow us, that would be awesome. I know on Facebook we're I think 2 likes, whatever the hell it is on Facebook. 2 likes away from 300 likes on there. So that'd be very cool if you go like us on there. That'd be cool. But yeah, follow us on all those social media sites. I always have fun talking music with people. And hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. If you listen to the radio show, send me song requests. I always take song requests. So hit me up with some of those at that email. If you like some Power Chord Hour stickers, I'm sending those out for free right now. So just hit me up, powerchordhour@gmail.com. We'll gladly send you some stickers, gladly play your song, your request or whatever. So, yeah, I believe that is everything. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. Very, very, this was so cool. A total honor. Hope to have Victor back soon. And, like he said, he has some new projects coming up that he couldn't announce just yet. So maybe once those are out, maybe he'll come back. That would be really cool. I'm going to leave you with one. If you notice, I did not play you a 1913 song yet, like I said I would. I'm going to leave you with one because this is really, I like this piece. It is like 8-9 minutes long. and like a really good piece to go out on. It's more like a musical piece than just like a song. It is really good, and it's just a very, I don't know, it puts you in a very cool, like nice vibe, really cool escape. And so I think we'll end with that. I think I'm going to leave you with this song. But thank you so much for checking out this week's episode of the Power Chord Hour. And here is Victor's new band, 1913. Go check them out. They're on social media. Their music is on Bandcamp and everything. So and Victor DeLorenzo, he said, he has his website too. And if you go there, it's kind of like a hub for everything. That'll kind of take you everywhere. But right now, from 1913, here is Arco Pizzicato right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast.